Hey people, it's your boy Ish and welcome to season 3 of the podcast. Now in this season we have a lot in store for you the listeners, but in case you're a new listener, let me reintroduce Loudly Saying It to you. This is a podcast that is aimed at young black men. In the podcast we talk about life, relationships, business, health, and any other topics you've always wanted to discuss, but we're too afraid to. Look, there's no judgment here, so let's just jump right in. Hey people, so before we jump into this episode with Reba, I just wanted to talk about a few things. When I was listening to the podcast, just to make sure everything is good, I came by this gem and I'm just going to go ahead and have it play for you guys so you guys can listen to it. It sums up what Reba does. Like she, as you can hear from her voice, is a very calm individual. She encourages that side of you that you always try to suppress just by being around her. Now, as a sex expert, that is a character that will make you get your people to open up. Like, I don't even know what to say. We're having a conversation. If you've listened by my voice, I am just rambling and she's just calmly responding. Now, if somebody like that cannot get you to open up, I don't think anybody else will. And talking about my voice, now I had a little issue with Zoom where for some reason my recording was a little lower than Reba's. She had a perfect recording, but mine was just a little lower. So my editing, we've tried to bring it up as high as possible without making it sound like I'm underwater. So forgive me for that. But the message is truly what Reba has to say. I'm just there to facilitate her saying it to you guys. But besides that, I want you guys to really listen to the message and I want you guys to actually take action, especially for the brothers. We have a lot of things in here for you. And for my sisters as well, listen and help us facilitate the message. And it will actually resonate with you as well. Well, with that being said, listen to the clip I wanted you to, and then let's jump into it.
I'm a black woman who's also married to a black man and is raising 3 black men of my own. So I'm here for black men. I love black men. I want to support black men, but also we all have to start listening to each other more.
Ladies and gentlemen, I have with me Reba The Diva. If you guys are not already following her on social media, it's the sex expert. It's Reba The Diva on Instagram. She and I reconnected during my first season of the podcast. That's when the podcast was called Apparently with Mr. Gander. And I know I went to DC, Reba, if you remember when I went and I sat with you. And Sarah was out there. I forgot the place, what the name of the place was called.
It was Cove. It was my office. It was Cove. Yeah.
So I went over there, I had to set up everything, and she was very gracious with me. This person that we only met once prior to that. And I said, you know what? I want to have a conversation with her about sex and everything. And I was going into it not knowing how this conversation was going to turn out. Because I've never actually had a conversation about sex with somebody, let alone somebody who that's what they do. That's their profession. They educate people about sex. I was always looking forward to bringing her back on the podcast. So I thought, well, what better way to do it than season 3? And Reba, if you just go ahead and reintroduce yourself to the audience. Some people might remember you. Some people are new. So just please go ahead and introduce yourself.
Sure. Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Reba, also known as Reba The Diva, and I am a certified sex educator and CEO of a company called Sexpert Consultants. And we teach pleasure-positive sex education workshops to curious adults.
Oh, awesome. I could not have even said that better. And people always think well, adults, curious adults, what does that mean? That's like somebody like me. So for you guys who try to think oh, you know everything about sex, trust me, after you have a conversation with Reba, you learn that you know very, very little. Very, very little. And most of the stuff we know also is based on what we were taught by our parents, or what we were taught by culture out there, the things that we think it's not normal for you to talk about. So today we're definitely going to go into that. But before we go forward, I want you guys to know what the overarching conversation is. It's about understanding that it is okay to talk about sex. And as black men, which you guys know, the brothers out there, it is okay to express your sexuality in a way where it doesn't have to be the toxic way we've been taught, that as a black man, when you talk about sex, it has to be in this place that doesn't include your partner in it. That makes it feel like you have all the cards, you hold all the cards, and you have to be the one to kind of dictate how things go. And also another thing that we're trying to talk about today is protecting Black women. So this is going to be first part of the Dear Black Men episodes. And this is just telling you guys that, hey, we got to protect them. Like I've told you guys on the story the other day that I sent out to the guys that are on the text group, it's if you want them to be fighting for your freedom, you have to continue to protect them. And what better way to start doing that than talking about sex, than just being in the sex education class with a sex educator.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yes.
Go ahead. I love how you talk about that, right? How you view sex education as like this revolutionary act, right? Because it's more than just learning how penises and vaginas work, right? It's really like understanding what pleasure is and how it works, and like really dedicating yourself to that for yourself and for your partner. And I think Black men especially are battling two battles, right? The first battle is not really like understanding, if they're hetero, right? Not really understanding women and how our bodies work, but then like not really feeling loved and like comfortable and empowered within themselves, right? Because toxic masculinity tells you that if you're not strong with like 6-pack abs and like ripped muscles and big arm, like you are not, manly. And so men find themselves in this really like insecure space and don't know how to deal with that insecurity, because what that insecurity is telling them is that they're not men, right? So yeah, I get it. And that's why I roll up my sleeves and do this work. And like, yeah, I teach little cute classes like Blow His Mind, Fellatio 101 and Cunnilingus 101, how to eat cake. But beyond that, like it's much deeper than that, like way deeper than that.
It is, but those classes are definitely needed. Trust me. Needed. So let's not downplay the importance of those classes, because I know the guys out there have their stories of things that they've been through, and they thought, well, yeah, man, after tonight, she ain't going nowhere. And then the next day, she doesn't even call you back. You're like, whoa, I laid it down. And she's over there like, nah, he did it. So, guys, you need to make sure you link up with Reba and get in one of those classes. Please, please, please. It's necessary for us to be able to pleasure our partners and know what kind of pleasure we want back. And that's definitely what she's discussing in that. But like you say, yeah, sex education is revolutionary. I know there's a new, or rather maybe a second season now on Netflix. I forgot the title of the show, but it's about sex education and stuff.
It's called Sex Education.
Oh, well. I've seen it on Netflix. Like when I go on, it will say sex education or something. I saw the preview, but I never actually watched it. But definitely that's something. If you want to start small, you can try that out. Check it out. I'm pretty sure they have some information on it.
Yeah, I mean, so Sex Education is like, it's a scripted show about a woman who is a sex educator, and like all of the teenagers, like it's about teenage angst, right? And like all the things that we learn that we shouldn't, and like all of the places that we actually learn. It's a good show. I don't want to spoil it for anybody. It's a good show. I don't watch it because it's like being at work, right?
Exactly. No, I get it. I get it. But another thing also, why I love having you on as well, is because this show, like I said before, is geared towards Black men, right? And I'm not saying that the sisters and our queens are not also targeted, but I want the Black men to actually listen. And I have these people that come on that talk to you, that actually tell you things that maybe society has not told you before, or society is in the case of sex, society has told you that you don't talk about these things as a Black man. And so not only are you a man, you're a Black man as well in this nation, in this country, where with everything that's going on, we know how society deals with it, what society thinks we are, or who society thinks we are. But the reason why I love having you is you're hearing this from a Black woman, a woman that knows what you're going through, somebody that is going through the same things sometimes that you're going through. So the message, yeah. Go ahead, Reba.
I'm a Black woman who's also married to a Black man and is raising 3 Black men of my own. So like I'm here for Black men. I love Black men. I want to support Black men, but also like we all have to start listening to each other more. So
yeah, definitely. So you see, that's why because I know if I brought somebody on, and I'm not trying to knock anybody else's thing or whatever, but bringing somebody on that cannot relate to your background, that doesn't know what you're going through on a day-to-day basis, sometimes there's going to be a gap in the message. as much as they're trying to help you, there's going to be a gap in the message just because they don't know how to relate or how to relay the message to you because they don't have that background. And that's why whenever I think about having these conversations, the first person that comes to mind is Reba, because I know when I had my first interview with her, as much as I was interviewing her about for the show, I learned from it. And because there was a way she relayed the message. And for the brothers out there, this is for you guys. This is to educate you guys on the importance of listening and communicating. It's not just when you listen to this, I don't want you to go like, well, I bet I'm about to call my girl right now and show her what I learned today. I mean, you can do that if you learned a lot of stuff, but I want you to listen to what she has to say. And the sex and pleasure is not just about the act. And I'm pretty sure there's more to it. And hopefully we will go ahead and kind of dive a little deeper into that so you get like the behind the scenes for that. Go ahead. You got something to say?
No, I was just going to echo that. Like as there's this great book called Pleasure Activism. I recommend everybody go read it. It's by a Black woman named Adrienne Marie Brown. And it's about exactly what you're talking about, right? Like about how as Black people, we are often like joy is taken from us. Pleasure is like denied from us. And so this work that I do and this work that we do and the learning that people do around me is so important because to reclaim your pleasure is to reclaim your joy. Right. And sometimes in this like world where things are hard, our joy is really the one thing that we can come back to. And so through this work, I am teaching people how to find their joy and find their pleasure, but also like, I'm saving the world one orgasm at a time. So.
You're definitely saving the world. And I love that. It's to reclaim your pleasures, to reclaim your joy. So that's a gem there because and I know myself included, sometimes you feel like, well, I cannot do this or I cannot say certain things. And even my wife would say that sometimes, like, you don't share some of the things that you really like or the things that you want to do. And sometimes it's out of fear. It's like, well, I don't want to be judged. And it's like, well, if you're not opening up, she will end up thinking, well, he doesn't trust me, or maybe he's up to something else. And you might not be up to anything. It's just that you've been taught, especially me coming from Africa, sex is not something you talk about. For some reason, they believe that you get old and then kids just appear. Like nobody ever teaches you about sex. Nobody ever talks to you about sex. You're told to not have sex. And when you're going through school, I know people have seen memes out there. Said African parents, when you're in middle school, don't get a boyfriend. In high school, you don't need a boyfriend. In college, you don't need a boyfriend. But when you graduate, they say, where's your husband? So you've taught me not to do this thing or not to even talk about it all my life. And then when I'm in my 30s, in my 40s, I have no kids. You start calling all my aunties and uncles like, complaining that he doesn't want to give me any grandkids. How am I supposed to give you grandkids whenever I had that conversation?
And like, think about this. Not only are you not allowed to talk about it, you're not supposed to talk about it, you're not supposed to have it, but then once you get married, magically, you're supposed to know everything about it and be good at it.
Exactly. Because, actually somebody was just talking about that earlier, that a newly married couple back home, and now they're having issues because the husband is complaining that the wife is very reserved and everything, and basically doesn't really want to do anything in bed. And now the mother-in-law of the husband is telling her daughter, like, well, why don't you know how to pleasure your husband and everything? And her question is, did you teach me? Was I taught this? And now she's going like, well, you can't be asking me those questions. Like, well, you're the one asking me why can't I pleasure my husband? So who taught me how to do it? Like, who talked to me about this thing? Nobody. But now I'm expected to do all these things because he's complaining now. And my thing was like, why is he complaining? What is he doing? Like, if you think you know so much, why don't you try to educate her a little bit so you guys can get to a better level?
Yeah. Yeah, education goes a long way in saving things, right? Because you don't know what you don't know. And so when I see people, they're like, I tell them how clitorises work and how penises work. And they're like, oh, this makes so much sense, right? Because even when we do learn this stuff in school, we learn like what a penis is, what a vagina is, maybe, right? We learn why not to have sex, right? Like my sex education was like, they showed us pictures of genitals that had been infected with sexually transmitted diseases. And it was like, why would anybody want to ever do this? And then I had sex for the first time and I was like, oh, this is why. But yeah, so when we're taught like all of these like fear-based, don't, there's a lot of shame that we hold around that, right? And then we become adults and it's like, oh, our pleasure matters. Oh, but what is that? Like, how do I even understand what that is when I've been distancing myself from it for so long?
No, yeah, definitely. And some of the things that we learn too, maybe things we should have been taught in school. I know we never had that in growing up back in Sierra Leone in high school. There's never sex education. As biology, like you said, they would talk about diseases that can result from sexual transmitted diseases and stuff like that. And you're told, okay, if you do this, you do this, you do this. And they tell you, well, if you have sex, use condom. But they never show you what a condom is. And you don't really have that much access to it. But you're expected to use it to protect yourself. And you're expected to not be sexually active and just grow up to be this perfect being. But then when you grow up, like, you should know all this stuff. And then you come to America and then you realize like, oh my God, like this is what sex is. This is what this life is. And, having conversations with people that are into alternative things when it comes to pleasures, when it comes to sex. And for me, I know sometimes, I want to say I'm a really open-minded person, but sometimes when people just tell you certain things, which honestly, if you look at it, it's not weird. I just get that reaction like, oh my, you're into that? Like, and that's because we're not educated enough to understand that people find pleasure in different things. Right? Like the first time I discovered, first of all, I heard this term BDSM. I had no idea what it was. And then I discovered it. I was like, wow, this is a thing. Like, it's really a thing, right? And then I realized that there's such a huge community for it. And I was telling somebody about it and they go like, really? Like, people really do that? Like, wow, America is crazy. I'm like, nah. It's like, people do that back in Africa, but they don't even know what it is.
And you know what? But that's also part of the reason why we don't talk about things, right? Because you're so afraid that someone's going to yuck your yum, right? And all we want to do is be normal. And so if I'm out here like craving bondage and like I talk to my partner about it and they have that same reaction, they're like, what? You people do that? No. Then I'm probably never going to say that again to another partner, right? And now I am repressed. And I'm not, my sexual freedom is not as liberated as it could be because someone yucked my yum, right? And so, yeah, you do have to, but that comes with not being exposed to these things, right? Not knowing what's out there because some people are like, oh, BDSM, no. And then they take my 50 Shades of Play introduction to BDSM class and they're like, wait a minute, I do like bondage. I would like to be tied up. Maybe this is something that I want to do, right? But we have all of these preconceived notions, like 50 Shades of Grey makes you think that all BDSM is abusive. And like, no, in fact, it can be used to help heal a lot of traumas. I wish more Black people would be talking about BDSM because it can be really healing, yeah.
And actually, as much as I don't like the movie 50 Shades of Grey, not because of whatever, it's just because I read the books prior, and I just feel like it did not live up to my expectation as far as what I was expecting. And I felt like that exposed a lot of Black people to that part of when it comes to sexuality and all that stuff. And but then again, most people end up thinking that's what it's all about. It's all about the 50 Shades of Grey. I'm like, well, like 99% of you guys are not Christian Grey. You don't have alcohol all over the place. So,
also Christian, so can we talk about this for a second? So BDSM is not like 50 Shades of Grey is the worst example on TV of BDSM, right? Christian Grey was a rich, borderline psychopathic person, right? And a lot of the like safety mechanisms that are built into like BDSM play were not discussed. It was a very just irresponsible display of BDSM. But I am really grateful, you're right, that like a lot more people started talking about it. Ooh, what's bondage? Ooh, what's these clamp things that he was using? Like it made people curious because they were exposed. So.
Yeah. And I know a lot of gray silk ties sold. For some reason, I don't know why I remember that fact. A lot of gray silk ties sold that year when the first one came out. And I was like, these poor people, they're going to go out there, choke out their partners, having no idea what they're doing. But like you said, it's all about exposure. It's all about
Mhm.
finding people like yourself that can educate us and say, look, it is okay to explore these things, but you have to do it in a way where you understand all the mechanisms and everything that goes into it. You don't just
Mhm.
grab a tie and like tie somebody down or whatever. There's a process to this thing. And if you understand the
Yeah.
process, then you actually get the pleasure out of it.
But the process is what's beautiful, right? Like BDSM, before you even begin to start playing, right? You and your partner have to have a good, like, deep conversation about boundaries and like safe words and what you will do and what you won't do and like what you're into, and so that those are conversations that people don't typically have ever. And so I don't know, I think it's cool for people to even just want to explore that kind of thing, because even if they decide, okay, BDSM is not for them, they've at least started to have the conversations that help them understand what their pleasure really does look like. Besides, missionary, vanilla, what everybody, what porns tell us what sex is supposed to look like. What is sex actually for you? Right. And I think when you figure that out, it can be really powerful.
No, yeah, I know, and I know back last year when we did the interview, I know you had this list that you provided me where you can use to have communication, like communicate with your partner. And I think that's something I probably have get from you, and just put it in the article, just put as a downloadable file so people can maybe
Of course.
download that and have that conversation, because that helps you a lot. It helps you start the conversation. You might not be comfortable enough to start it on your own.
Yeah. So for those who didn't hear that episode, we were talking about how to talk to your partner about sex, and I was talking about my yes, no, maybe fantasy list. And basically it's just a list of sexual activities. Like nobody sits down and says, okay, anal sex, you like that? I like that. Yes. Okay. Oral sex, you like that? I like that. Yes. Okay. Bondage, you like that? Oh, I don't like that. Okay, next, right? So that's what the yes, no, maybe list does. You complete it on your own and your partner does too. And then you come together and you see where you both overlap. Where are your yeses and maybes and your partner's yeses and maybes the same? Maybe you guys do both want to try bondage, or maybe you both want to do more, hair pulling or biting. Like these are all the things that you can discover when you have this conversation, and the yes, no, maybe list will definitely help spark it. So
No, yeah, definitely. And you talked about like the porn industry is taught on some people. So when they see these porn stars going at it and they think that's what sex is, like, come on, that's a production. You gotta know that.
well, it's getting worse, right, with OnlyFans. So, and not worse. Like, I just want to say that for the people out there who are doing sex work and, making money on OnlyFans, do your thing. Like, I am not condemning anybody at all. But what I am saying is when you do that, it's transactional. It's not like a person is like, okay, like this is a job, right? These are paid actors that are acting in porns, and these are paid models who are this is not like a pleasure based thing. And when you think about your own personal sexual experiences, how often do they actually look like the porns? And when they do, how pleasurable was that really?
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. That's definitely true. And I was reading an article, and I'm glad you actually brought up OnlyFans. And this is, I believe, let me just read a bit of this from the New York Times, right? And this was from back in February. That's before the whole COVID. Well, I guess COVID would have been around, but he
But before we knew about it.
before we knew about it. I'm not gonna get into that. But just it says every day hundreds of men pay Danny Harwood to enact their sexual fantasies and boost their self-esteem. Sometimes her clothes come off. Sometimes she dresses up as a nurse or dominatrix. If a guy is a regular customer, she likely knows his birthday, the names of his children, his pets, and even when to call after a surgical procedure. Now, this is somebody that you never met in person that has all this information about you, that you pay your money. Now, like you said, kudos to the sex workers, because you're doing your thing. That's your business. That's your hustle. But
Mhm.
some of these men, like you said, have children, have pets. These are family men that have wives that they will never sit down and have a conversation with. They say, well, I would like to see you dress up as a nurse or as a dominatrix, or do this or do this. But they're willing to pay somebody like Harwood hundreds of dollars to do the same thing.
Yeah.
And then the wife is wife is telling her girlfriend, like, well, he doesn't talk to me. We don't communicate. I don't know what he likes, but he's on OnlyFans paying somebody else to do what he likes when he has a wife that he doesn't have to pay. All he has to do is have a conversation with her.
Okay, can I tell you something? And you can tell me if this is true. I'm not a man and I'm not a black man, so I really can't, speak for y'all. But from what I've seen, society teaches men, right? This is part of toxic masculinity, that to use your words and emotions through your words is a signal of weakness, right? And so by default, you all learn to communicate more with the body, right?
Yeah.
Whereas women, we are taught not to be strong or tough because that's not feminine, right? And we talk through our emotions. That's what we do. So our language is words and y'all's language is touch. And so when you are asking a man to put Esther Perel is my favorite sex educator, and she has a book called Mating in Captivity. It's a great book where she analyzes all this.
Mm-hmm.
But basically, she says, one of the men in her book is quoted, and he says, "It is so hard for me to put my heart into the prison of words."
Oh, wow. That's deep.
Right? Because it's like you are literally taught not to be this way, not to show emotion and not to talk about your problem. You know what I mean? Not to talk about those emotions. Mm-hmm. And so if he is afraid to have this conversation, if he is afraid of her reaction, what if she doesn't want to do it? Then that's a whole like lifelong problem that he has to deal with, versus just paying someone who's not going to divorce him or cause problems in his life to do what he wants and just, and not even have a conversation about it. Look, here's the money. This is what I want. Right? It's not a conversation. It's not no reaction from her. No, is that okay with you? No, it's very transactional. And so I recognize the role that sex workers play in sexually dysfunctional relationships. But so the two things are like, we as women have to learn how to speak the language of physicality, right? And men, if they want to meet us on common ground, have to learn how to speak the words.
Definitely. And that is very true, because like you said, it's really tough sometimes to have these conversations, but that's where something like the yes, no, maybe list comes into play. Because mm-hmm. if you know, if you're thinking, well, how am I going to start this conversation with her? So download the list. Hey, so I downloaded this from Reba's website. Here you go. It's a copy. In your spare time, just go ahead and answer it. I'll answer mine. And then whenever we got time, we can sit down and compare notes. Mm-hmm. That's it. So the conversation is really short. But then once you sit down and then you take a list and you start saying like, oh my God, she likes like half the things I do. But I would never have guessed that because I never had that conversation. But now that you have that list and you have the answers, you can start saying, well, okay, so you like this. Well, what about this do you like? Mm-hmm. Like that. And I know once I've shared my list with you, I know at this point you know what I like, so I'm going to have that conversation with you anyway. Mm-hmm. That's the question. Mm-hmm. I'm going to have that conversation with you. But like you said, OnlyFans, it plays its role, and I know a lot of people have been knocking it, and I've been seeing people commenting under these people on Instagram that have OnlyFans saying, well, you're selling your body and all that stuff. But half of these people are the same people that are still going on OnlyFans and actually paying, and then come on Instagram and pretend like you don't. I was like, come on, dude. Like, I'm pretty sure you have another name on OnlyFans and you're paying for it. But what's your take on that when it comes to what people are saying, like as far as sex workers, that they're selling their body and all that stuff? That is not something they should be doing. What's your take on that?
First of all, I identify as a sex worker. I suck silicone penises and vulvas for a living, so that would make me a sex worker. Right. Mm-hmm. With that said, a lot of people don't view what I do as sex work. Right. People not in this industry, but people like, just lay people, just the everyday person. Right. And that has to stop. Anyone who is working in this industry, who is educating, who is coaching, who is counseling, who is working full service, working as a cam girl, selling pictures of themselves or videos or whatever, we're all in this field of sex work. Okay. Number one. Number two, sex work is necessary and much of it is not illegal, right? And so people have criminalized this industry that is very legitimate. I make a full-time living doing what I do, not because of anything salacious, but because people need to know these things, right?
Yeah.
When you think about the role of a sex worker for the disabled or for people with disabled partners, right? Or there's this new movement now called, well, it's not new, but it's newish, right? It's called surrogate partner therapy, where a person works with a therapist, a licensed professional works with a therapist and the patient to basically be in relationship with them, both intimately and sexually, so that they can learn the habits and behaviors that are necessary and and healthy in a positive, helpful relationship, right? And so how is that different from sex work? Like,
definitely.
like, so what I'm saying is like it is a person's choice to sell their body. If you think that a coal miner is labor, but sex workers are not, then you have a like very warped understanding of what labor is. A person has signed up to do this work. They got the body to do it. People are paying for it. Like it's, yeah, I think it comes from, again, this like shame and like taboo that we put on sex. Because even when I first started my work, people were like, you're not going to make a living doing that. Why would you do that? And those same people are in my classes and paying for coaching and really understanding why I would do that, right? So
no, yeah. So because and that's the thing as well, because I know I've seen people like will post the comments that they get from these people that condemning them. It's like, oh, if I see you in the streets, and I'm gonna do this to you, I'm gonna do that to you.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, and some of these actually, which is why I want to address this as well. Some of these were black men commenting on the black women's social media platforms, saying like, you can't be selling your body and everything.
And these are the same men who love Cardi B too, right? Like, it's like, no, you're selling your body, but Cardi B is queen. And you're like,
Exactly. That's the thing. Like, you tell these people that they're selling a body, but then you go to the strip club and you spend $200, $300,
hundreds of dollars
and just wasting money and all that stuff. You don't consider it wasting money because it's what you want to do, but what they're doing because somebody else is paying for it, and you're not willing to pay for it on OnlyFans, and y'all are selling your bodies and everything. You can't be doing that and all that stuff, and you threatening them. And I think there was somebody that was attacked by somebody that followed her, and it was a black girl, and it's got me thinking like, okay, we're willing to do these things for, and I don't want to generalize it and say it's all black men, but most of the ones that I've come to realize that have problems with black women will not complain if the person that was doing this was not a black woman. They will pay for it. They will say, well, she has a right to do whatever she wants to do with her body. But then as soon as it becomes a black woman, it's, oh, you can't be doing that. It makes you look cheap or whatever. You can't be selling your body. And these are the same people that will attack black women. And the same black women that will be out in the streets protesting for Black Lives Matter, for black men, protecting black men. But they're being attacked by the same people they're trying to protect, right? And I know there was this BLM activist in Florida that was killed by a black man. That got me thinking, like, we always saying black lives, black lives, black lives, but we're not protecting our mothers. We're not protecting our sisters, our daughters. We're not protecting
our wives, our girlfriends.
Right? We're not protecting them. We're putting them out there. We're the ones judging them harshly. We're the ones treating them as if they're less than.
I call this, all of these instances that you mentioned are what I like to call patriarchal paradoxes, right? So when you see a black woman making money in the sex industry, two things happen. One, you're taking a person who is oppressed by the patriarchy and then taking that oppression and empowering themselves with a little capitalism, right? You're seeing this thing happen and you're like, okay, oh, you're fighting the patriarchy. I don't like this, right? But also now you become unreachable, right? Like, I see a lot of men railing against Instagram models, right? It's like they talk so bad about these Instagram models. And it's like, these aren't even sex workers. These are Instagram models, right? They rail against them because these women seem so out of reach, right? And it's like, well, if I can call you cheap and step on your self-esteem, then maybe you'll be back into my reach. You know what I mean? So I see it's this mechanism, right? It's like, oh, I'm trying to fight against the patriarchy, but also perpetuating the patriarchy at the same damn time. So I call it a patriarchal paradox. It happens a lot, especially when we start to like examine what it means to be what it means for masculinity to be toxic versus healthy, right? Because we talk a lot about toxic masculinity, but we don't talk about what healthy masculinity looks like, right? And healthy masculinity looks like protecting black women.
No, yeah, definitely.
Right? Black women, black femmes, black trans people, like these are the most marginalized of folks. And I think, and I'm about to say something that's a little controversial. I apologize in advance. Okay. Black men have a lot of privilege when we look at this landscape of Blackness, right? Black men have the privilege of the patriarchy. They have patriarchal privilege. So that means their voices are heard when ours are not. That means all of the Black men who are dying at the hands of the police are more likely to get, shouted out louder, and their stories will be spread, because this is the patriarchy at work, right? And so at the same time, whereas I'm not saying that Black men are privileged. I'm not saying that Black men have more or less privilege than each, you know what I mean? What I am saying is that Black men have male privilege, and male privilege allows them into places and spaces where they have the opportunity to either perpetuate that toxic masculinity or protect Black women, because there is no in between. There is no, you cannot support the patriarchy and protect Black women at the same time. You just can't do it. So a lot of the dismantling of the patriarchy is happening right now with the reproductive and women's rights and trans rights and racism, right? And calling out racial injustice. We are dismantling a lot of the tenets of the patriarchy. And now is the time to really examine your privilege and how the patriarchy is impacting you, because the patriarchy is the reason why people don't have their foreskins in this country. Okay. The patriarchy is the reason why many women will not suck a penis. The patriarchy is the reason why you are expected in old age to stay hard, and erectile dysfunction has you not having orgasms, right? The patriarchy F's you over too. So the more you can do to dismantle it and protect the women who are working to protect you, the better all of these things that we're talking about are going to be, right? The better our sex lives are going to be, the better our access to pleasure, the better our lives in this country and beyond.
No, yeah, definitely. And that's something, that's why I always challenge the audience, the brothers listening. It's like, you guys gotta listen to these conversations, because you're thinking that, okay, you're just doing it because you don't want them to be doing this with their body. But like you said, it's a patriarchal paradox, right? Because you're still trying to say, I'm trying to break this thing that society has built for centuries, but you're still helping it. You're still actually out there doing the same exact thing that you're saying they're doing to you, right? Like, I'm listening to you talking, I'm like, holy shit, right? The brothers out there, they say, nah, man, she can't be doing that. So why not? And you really don't have a good reason for it. It's just, you just feel like within you, it's wrong for them to be doing it. That's because it's been built within you to fight for this thing that actually doesn't protect you even, right? And like you're saying, like, Black men having that privilege as males. And I experience that all the time, right? Because I work in the hospitality industry, and I'll have some white men that will come in, and you have like a Black female server. They do not want to address that person. So usually they'll have like their wives talk to her. And then one of my servers actually called me and said, yo, you need to talk to this guy. And when I went over, he had a conversation with me. And then at the end of it, it's like, man to man. And I'm like, wait, what? And I'm thinking, okay, you were not willing to talk to this server. That's one of our best servers. And she was doing everything she could to make sure that you were happy with your experience, but you would not open your mouth and talk to this lady, because I'm assuming it's because she was female, and not only that, she was a Black female, because you let your wife talk to her, because I guess at least you guys are both females, so you can talk. And then as soon as I went over there, the wife didn't even say a single word. He was the first one to start saying something. I'm like, wait. So I was kind of shocked. So I went over to her. I said, are you sure he did not talk? He's like, yeah, he would not say a single word to me. And then I observed when she went back over, and I noticed that he would not say anything. He would just look at his wife and point to her, and then the wife would say something. And it's stuff like that. And as men, we usually just ignore it because somebody would throw the, man-to-man thing. And so you ignore the fact that what they're doing is actually telling you that your sister, your wife, your girlfriend is less than, but I would still talk to you, even though I consider you less than, but at least you're a man. I'll give you that. So we fail to see that because we think, oh, no, we're just talking man to man. Man thing. After that observation, I started like, I don't like the whole thing man to man anymore. Like, okay, so what about her? Like, she doesn't matter anymore. And so that's one thing I want guys to think about when you're out there, you're going through your day. You just, people are telling you man to man and all that stuff. What does that really mean? It's telling you that the females, the women around you are not as important as you.
They're invisible.
Yeah.
They don't matter. And like, the thing is, there are certain, like, and this is why I said, like, when you ask me what my thing I want Black men to do is just examine how you have perpetuated the patriarchy today. right? Like, what have I done to contribute to my own oppression today? And how can I change that tomorrow, right? Because we do so much to contribute, right? Can we talk about WAP really quick? I know we're going over, but can we talk about WAP?
Definitely.
Because so many men are like, I see them, so many Black men were pissed off about that song. How dare Black women make a song called anything about pussy? Like, this is just unacceptable. I'm not going to mention Biggie, Tupac, like Scarface, like and those are just the old rappers, like not to mention these new folks, okay? I'm not even going to get on Lil Wayne. I'm not going to get on it, okay? But not to apples. I'm not even going to do that. What I'm saying is, if you really examine that song, it's not about vagina, mostly.
Yeah.
Like, there are certain like small references to it, but it's mostly about penises. Mm-hmm. It's mostly about having sex with penises. So that is a song all about penis. And men are mad. Like, why are you mad?
Yeah, definitely. Because actually when the song came out, and somebody told me, it's like, yeah, you've listened to WAP, and I'm like, what is that? Because I had no idea the song came out. I'd always thought about it, I said maybe Cardi B and Megan should do something. I was like, that would be fire and all that stuff. Not to know that these people were working on something and actually released it. And I got to work, everybody's talking about WAP. And I was like, what is this? And they told me what it was, but then all I listened to was the stuff on TikTok, the little snippets. Mm-hmm. And then one day I was doing something in the back, and I was like, you know what? It came on my Spotify list, and it started playing, and I was listening to the lyrics. And I just put that on repeat. I was like, oh my God, this is fire right here. And the chef came by, a female chef, and I was like, and I told her, I said, have you listened to this? Like, this is fire right now. She's like, you're just listening. So this has been out for like a few months now. Like, I'm like, yeah. Because I listened to the little part, like the certified freak and all that stuff, but little snippets on TikTok and stuff, and that's all I knew. And I'm like, okay, cool. That sounds cool, but the rest of the music probably sucks. But then I listened to it, and I listened to the lyrics. I'm like, yo, first of all, it shows talent right here. It shows these ladies going at it. Like, it's challenging the status quo, right? Because you always think like the guys are the ones with it. Yeah, we say, oh, Megan can do it, but then I always got to say, well, but this other dude can do it even better and all that stuff. Most of the time it's because they're guys. That's why we say that. But then I listened to the both of them, and I've always been in love with Cardi B. I remember watching Cardi B with my wife when she was on the show, and it's just a laugh for me. That's what got me hooked on Cardi B. So when she actually started doing her music and it blew up, I almost felt like that one of those friends from the neighborhood that we grew up, like I knew you before you were Cardi B kind of thing. So, and then Megan came along, and I wanted them to always collaborate because I felt like they were going to challenge what we as men have placed in society, and they're going to be fearless about it. And that song actually has gotten a lot of people challenging things because when they listen to it, well, they're doing that. And it's not that this is the first time we've talked about pussy and all that stuff in music, even by a woman, but yeah, people like Lil Kim and all that stuff. It's like we forget so quick, so easily that this has been there before. And because now it's in this, with this movement and everything that's going on, and it's challenging us as Black men. And we start putting out these little memes and stuff on social media telling people like, well, you don't have a WAP or whatever, you got a DAP and all that stuff.
So that's what I was about to say. So I actually don't like that song. I'm not a fan. Because I think as a sex educator, right? Like, so personally, it comes on, I'll twerk a little bit, but like, but as a sex educator, it's doing that perpetuating thing, right? This is a patriarchal paradox where it's like, all right, your pussy has to be wet and it has to be always on. It has to be super fire and it has to be great every time. And if it's dry, you have no value. Mm-hmm. And that's not true. Look, I'm going to tell y'all something. And this is, again, an unpopular opinion. If Cardi B is breastfeeding, she has DAP right now, unless she's using lube. Because when you breastfeed, you have lower levels of testosterone in your body, which is directly correlated to how much lubricant we have in our bodies. So if you are breastfeeding, if she's still breastfeeding culture, then she probably is using lube because her pussy is not getting as wet. And that's okay. Like, it's okay to not have a dripping wet vagina every time. It's okay to take a few minutes to get hard, okay? Like, I just wish people would stop putting such pressures on each other, because now, right, we have all of these new ways to insult each other. It's like, oh, well, you got dab, or it ain't that, or like, it just...
I definitely see that. But for me, I actually love it just because of like the lyrics and everything, and the fact that
it's catchy.
I wanted to see these two people collaborate. And I'm looking at it as, okay, they're taking back some of that, oh, women should be this. And they're saying, look, we can be strong, we can be bold, we can actually talk about these things that you men have always been talking about. And you perpetuate this thing on your music, your videos, and everything. But then when we do it, it's a problem. Like, it's, oh my God, you can't be like, if I would have been the same person on your video with the same outfit on, and that video would have been fire. It would have been selling out. People would have been looking at, loving it, and say, oh, he got Cardi B and Megan on his video doing all this dance. But now it's just the two of us doing it. It's a problem. Then when we got one of the Kardashians on it. Anyway, I'm not going to talk about the Kardashians.
Please don't.
Yeah,
you're going to trigger me.
Yeah, and I almost triggered myself. But it's like, you talk about one of them, you have those people on, and all of a sudden it's a problem. It's like, come on, like, do you want us to do this on our own, or should we just wait for you guys to bring us on your music videos as features, and then we start dancing for you? If this was a dude that had this, I think it would have blew up even more.
Oh, yeah, and the response would have been less visceral from the male population, for sure. For sure.
Yeah, so yeah, definitely. That's another thing. And I've challenged a few guys out there, say, look, like, we say, oh, I don't like the song. I said, what don't you like about the song? Really? Like, was it that the performance wasn't good? Was the lyrics not good? And I was like, nah, like, they shouldn't even be talking about it. I was like, why? But why not? You know, it is. I'm like, well, like you said, Biggie and these people all talked about it, but that's Biggie though. I'm like, okay, so that's what's that supposed to mean? That's Biggie though.
Okay, well, so Little Kim, but that's Little Kim though. Like, I'm confused.
That's the thing. It's like a lot of them don't have a reason for some of the things that they do, but that's where it comes back to that whole thing, perpetuating patriarchy.
Okay, so that's one thing I want to say. Like, people will always say, well, there's no reason. Like, I have a preference. I don't date dark-skinned girls, or I have a preference. I just don't want my woman talking about that. Okay, but these preferences are deeply rooted in how the patriarchy has like messed with your brain, right? So when you start sitting down and unpacking those things, this is why I'm asking y'all all to unpack your relationship with the patriarchy, right? Because when you start unpacking those things, it's like, oh, do I not date dark-skinned women because my mother was a dark-skinned woman and we don't have the best relationship? Like, is that it? But like, that takes like the talking, right?
And that's why I've also become an advocate for Black men going to therapy.
Yes. Yes.
It's like, you got to have those conversations. I remember the first time me and my brother talked about going to therapy, and he's like, yo, I'm going to be going to therapy. I was like, oh, I bet. And he's my best friend, but I called my brother, and I was like, okay, if he's going to go to therapy, I need to try this thing out too. And I went, and that first conversation, or the first maybe 20 minutes, I was kind of reserved, holding everything back. And then next thing you know, it just started flowing. And after that, I was like, oh my God, like, how come I've been missing out on this? Like, what have I been doing all my life? Like, I've been missing out on this.
Do you know how many Black men do this with their girlfriends and their wives? They're like, oh man, this was great. I don't need to go to therapy because I just can talk to you. And I'm like, no, go to therapy. That's wonderful. Congratulations. Where did you find your therapist? I find a lot of men have a hard time finding. My husband has been having a hard time finding a Black male therapist. Is your therapist a Black male?
Mine is female. So as Black girl therapy.
Okay, that's where I found mine.
Therapy for Black girls, right?
That's where I found mine. Yeah. I was just going to give him my therapist, and then I was like, I don't know if I want to give him my therapist.
So one of my mentors, she lives in Baltimore, Crystal Henry, and we were talking, and she told me, like, yeah, well, actually, my therapist got connected me with one of my mentors, because we had the conversation, and she's like, look, you work well with women. Like, I was like, yeah, because every person I've ever worked with, I feel like I learned a lot from, where like we're in a higher position than me with women. It's like, yeah, you tend to work well with women, so you probably need a female mentor. Because like the guys that I have as mentors, like some of them are awesome, but some of them are just asses, like for no reason. Right? And I'm like, bro, come on. But and when we talked, and she's the one that connected me with she's connected me with a lot of great people, And she's like, you work well with women. You need to reach out to this person, Crystal. And Crystal's been awesome. She's an awesome mentor. But yeah, I was home and I was thinking about a therapist. And I said, you know what? I listened to a podcast by Side Hustle Pro. I forgot her name.
Okay.
I was listening to it, and they had the person that started therapy for Black girls on and she was talking about you can go on the website. So I went on the website, looked for somebody in the area, found out, make sure it was covered by my insurance. Insurance, that's how they trap us. And then found out when there the first conversation. I came home, I told my wife, I said, "Yo," I said, "this is revolutionary." Like having those conversations. Like I was unpacking things I never even knew I had a problem.
Of course.
I had a survey that she gave like at the beginning, say, "Okay, answer these questions and everything." And then when I went, she's like, "Okay, based on your answers, you're borderline depressed." I'm like, "What?" I was like, I have never thought that I was borderline depressed. I see depressed people. I was like, yeah, I talk to them. I mentor people. I help them. I was like, people come to me for advice. What do you talk? He's like, yeah, they come to you for advice, but who do you go to for advice? I'm like, well, I don't. Yeah, like,
that's deep.
Yeah, she started breaking down some things, and I tell all my friends, I was like, yo, you guys need therapy. You guys need to.
You're the guy. You're the first time therapy guy.
you got to it's like me and my wife trying something for the first time. Like everybody, like, yeah, you got to try this. Like seriously. And now I know they have therapy for Black men as well, which is like the male equivalent of it. But I'm like, I wanted a female therapist because I felt like since I did not know at the time that I relate better to females than I do to men when it comes to having this kind of conversations, because I feel like I'm on that level where I can open up more to somebody of the opposite sex and actually have a conversation because I want that perspective from a different perspective.
Yeah.
Another guy would just say like, okay, they will listen, but you might not get the honest truth from them when it comes to as far as like the things they should be telling you. So I chose a black. I was like, also, I wanted a female therapist, but I wanted her to be Black as well. Because I wanted her to understand where I'm coming from, to understand the cultural references, the history and everything behind whatever it is I'm going through. And she's awesome. Like sometimes when like the other day I missed therapy, like I freaked out. I sent her a message. I said, "Yo, I missed therapy." She's like, "Look, we have another session like in a week."
So you're fine. You'll be fine.
Yeah, and then we'll get on and we'll have a conversation. And she's helped me as far as my business and some of the things that I thought that I didn't know. Like we did a review yesterday because it was Friday? It was a year after I started because she read the questionnaire to me back, the answers that I had. And at the beginning of the thing, I said, well, I felt lost. Like, I don't know, like what my true purpose is and the things. And then I think I answered the question that she asked me on Friday. And she's like, you know what? Let me read what you wrote for me when we started therapy at the beginning. And then when she read that, I was like, wait, that was me?
Oh.
Yeah, she's like, exactly. That's what you felt at that time. But the answer you just gave me shows that you now know the path that you should be walking, right? And then after that, I was just laughing because I was like, oh my God, okay. I guess I kept going because I'm expecting like this aha moment to say, okay, one day I'm just going to open my eyes and like, oh my God, everything has changed. But
I'm fixed.
Changing. Yeah. Things. Yeah. From session to session to session. And for her to just kind of take me back to a year ago to that question that she had asked and I had answered it. And then me realizing that's a whole different person that answered that question versus the person that was listening to her read it. Like, oh my God. So it's like, yeah, man, I'm all for therapy for Black men, especially, and not only in this country, especially African men too. Like we suppress way more than people think. And again,
I want you and every other Black and African man who's listening to our conversation right now to know that y'all are not hiding anything from anybody. We know y'all need therapy. Like we all know it's not a secret. Okay.
No, yeah, definitely. That's definitely true. Look, it's hard for us to admit that, but we do need therapy. And I've had an episode previous season about therapy and just reaching out to people, like talk to somebody that's going through therapy if you're skeptical about it. Like, ask about it. You can actually have sessions with these people, like a quick 15-minute session, and just see if you actually vibe with the person.
One of my close friends, her name is Esther Boykin, and she is a therapist. She owns a therapy practice in DC, and it is called she has these like virtual and some, hopefully when things come back in person, but she has these like happy hours called Therapy is Not a Dirty Word. And it's an hour where you go and you can ask therapists come and you can ask the therapist questions like,
Really?
what is therapy like? What do you do? It's like a big group discussion. And therapists are there and they will answer the questions and it's happy hour. So like it's a very informal setting and it really helps you understand like, oh, okay, this is what I could get from therapy. And it's good. Like it's good. Therapy is Not a Dirty Word on Instagram. That's their handle.
No, definitely. I'll make sure I provide that. Give them a shout out and probably follow them too, because that's awesome. That's something that you don't want. If you don't want to feel committed, you can just go have that hour and find out, do your own research, and then find somebody that you vibe with. Because that was one thing I was scared of, because I thought like once you select a therapist, that was it. Like you were stuck with this person. And my therapist told me like, look, if you don't feel like there's like we're vibing, you can always choose another person. I can recommend somebody else for you. Yeah. And I'm like, whoa, wow, I can really do that. He's like, yeah, it's your sessions. You're paying for them, and you got to find somebody that you're willing and able to talk to, that can actually help you. If I'm not helping you, then what's the point?
And like that's so important. I think that like men are so focused on sex a lot of times because they crave emotional intimacy. And for many men, emotional intimacy is only gained through sex. Right. And so therapy helps you learn to create emotional intimacy without that romantic sexual involvement. It's great.
Not yet. It's awesome. Yeah. And she's willing to like gives me shouts out for my business and everything, connects me with people. Like even for the podcast, she connected me with a few people in Atlanta and said, you need to reach out to this person, that person.
You found a good therapist. That's a good therapist.
Like, even when I wanted to do couples therapy, she's like, look, if your wife doesn't feel comfortable with me being the therapist, because I'm already your therapist, I can always recommend somebody else. They can do couples therapy. And then you can still just have me as your therapist. I'm like, you know what? Let's do that, because I don't want to share. She tends to take over anything that I share with her. I share my friend with her. All of a sudden, they're best friends. My sister with her. All of a sudden, they're sisters. I'm like, no, that's not how it works. And I'm not about to sit here. And next thing you know, she's texting my therapist, keying on the phone, like, oh my.
No.
No, that's not going to happen. Let's find somebody.
I feel the same way. No, I feel this. I do not want to share my therapist with my husband because I'm like, you get your own therapist. I talked to her about you. I don't want her to meet you. Like,
exactly. Mine lives in Colombia, and I think her therapy company is called Black Girl Therapy. Black Girl.
Nice.
Therapies. Yeah. So she's awesome. She's awesome. She also does like she's a motivational speaker as well and all that stuff. But she's awesome. But Reba, it's been awesome having you on. And before we get up, I just want to ask, well, first things first, one thing, I just want you to flex a little bit for the people. Like, what are you working on right now that people need to look forward to, and how can they connect with you on all the platforms?
Yeah, so I am currently working on a podcast about sex work called On the Business of Sex, where I'm interviewing traditional sex workers, but also folks in the sex industry adjacent to sex work, like therapists, counselors, educators, bloggers, product creators, all of those things, to talk about what it means to be in this field, the barriers that we encounter. And if you're someone who wants to get into this work, this is a really great podcast to listen to figure that out, right? And so it comes out in February 2021. It's called On the Business of Sex, and it'll be available anywhere you get your podcasts. If you want to find me before that, you can go to www.rebathediva.com. If you're looking for sex education classes, you can sign up online at sexpertconsultants.com. And I'm on all things social at Reba The Diva.
No, awesome. Like, you guys need to connect with Reba. She always has these classes that she's doing. I know she was downplaying these classes, but nah. And ladies, I know you're listening as well. Please feel free to connect with her. If you have questions, send them her way, or you can send them my way, and I'll see if she can answer some of them for you. And just go to these classes, have these conversations. And like you already know, she just pointed out a few things that are going on in the area. If you're in the DC area and like Black men, you need therapy, or you want to find out about therapy, make sure you go for one of these sessions. It's virtual right now, right, Reba?
Yeah. Therapy is not a dirty word.
Yeah, so therapy is definitely not a dirty word. And the same thing with sex. Sex is not a dirty word. Like you just got to know what you're doing and reach out to people like Reba to educate you, because it's not just about the act of it. It's everything else that comes with it. It's the communicating. It's being open and being available for your partner, guys. So, Reba, thank you for coming on. But before I let you go, there's one final thing that we usually ask, and we call this section the Say It Out Loud. And I usually would like to ask my guests, what is one issue that is going on right now that you want to say out loud? And what are you doing in your work or in your personal life to address this issue? And how can we help bring this issue in the forefront?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest issue that I want to call out is sexual shame. And I want to call it out and say its name, because that's how you get rid of shame, is by calling it out and shining a light on it. And what am I doing to help that is these workshops, having conversations like these and empowering people like you to have more conversations with like these with other people. And then I'm training other people to be just like me. We just started our training program on October 1st, and it's going through December 1st, and then we start again January through March. And I recognize that like there are people out in this world who want to help people combat sexual shame and want to educate people about sex education, but don't have the resources or the know-how or the roadmap to get started. And that's what I do.
No, that's awesome. So if somebody wants to become a sex educator like yourself, and you say you're doing a training now going on, right?
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah.
Well, since the training already started for this year, how can they sign up for the next year's training?
Yeah, so enrollment is actually still open for January through March through the end of December. So if you go to sexpertconsultants.com/apply, you can put in your application and get the interview process started. We do an application, an interview, and then we tell you about all of the different opportunities that are available with our program. And then you can enroll as late as March 1st of next year. And then we close enrollment all summer, and it opens back up again at the end of July for October through December.
Oh, that's awesome. And like you said, sexual shame is a real thing. It's out there. People have committed suicide because of it. People have killed people because of it. And we sometimes ignore it because like we do with every other shame, we just ignore it and say, well, if you don't talk about it, then it doesn't exist, but it does exist. And it's a serious thing. I want to thank Reba for doing what she's doing to put it in the forefront. And for you guys out there, I challenge you guys today, when you're going out there, I want you to start talking about this. I want you to discuss this. I want you to share this episode with your friends, with your brothers, with your sisters. And I want you to start answering some of the questions she had for you, like, what are you doing to perpetuate the thing that is holding you down, that's bringing you down, the patriarchy that you're complaining about, but you are actually helping it stay where it is right now while we're trying to dismantle it? What are you doing? Start analyzing your actions, because sometimes we might be blinded to our own actions because we think that's how we should be acting, but start questioning these actions. Like, if you're telling a Black woman that she can't have an OnlyFans because you feel like she's inaccessible to you now because she's making her money and she's doing what she's doing her hustle, and you have no good reason, you're helping perpetuate what the white man has put. That's basically what it is. Like, they've taught you that men should always be on top, and you feel that way, but you have no way to actually vocalize that. So you just say, well, yeah, she shouldn't be selling her body. Not questioning these things, your actions, right? And I'm going to share with you guys the list, the yes, maybe list that Reba has. So answer those things and then look and see if you're still not able to have that conversation with your partner. Jump on the website with Reba and then sign up for a class. Maybe you both sign up for a class, go together. And it's not just going to be you guys. It's other people will be there too. I'm pretty sure if you want to do something private as well, you will have those options as well. But go to the class, see how other people are going through the same struggles you're going through. And this is not just you. It's everybody. But Reba, it's awesome having you on. And I cannot wait to see when next we'll be back on. And I'm looking forward to the new podcast. People, you guys keep an eye out. I say it's coming on in February 2021.
February 2021 is called On the Business of Sex.
On the Business of Sex. I'm definitely going to make sure as soon as she lets me know when it's going to drop, I'm going to share it with you guys so you guys can jump on, start subscribing, liking, and sharing the podcast. All right. Well,
Thanks, Ish.
yeah, no, thank you. Thank you guys for listening today, people.